Welcome to the Womb and Birth Collective's Pregnancy and Postpartum Summit. I'm Melissa Chin Casey, and today we're talking to Catherine Ferreira. Catherine is a mama, a birth keeper, and a cocinera, and she's reviving and protecting her traditional birthing rites and ancestral recetas to strengthen the memory of where we came from. She currently runs a postpartum kitchen known as Madre Soltera's Cocina, and she nourishes families with intentionality and with lovingly curated menus. She tries to cultivate a deeper relationship and understanding of native foods and ways of healing during the postpartum journey. So I just wanted to say, welcome, Catherine. And to start off, just by asking you, how did you get into this work that you're doing? And if you could kind of tell us what are these traditions and these ancestral birthrights and these kind of lineages that you're following and that you're sharing and that you're learning about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much, Melissa, for having me here. Yeah, so how I got into this work, I think motherhood is definitely the initiation that kind of pushes us into these directions in life that we didn't foresee, but with full trust and understanding that, our path is always unfolding and we're learning as we go. So I'm currently still learning. This birth work is definitely it's an honor to do this work, but knowing that it's a lifelong work and we're constantly learning. So well, how I learned, I had my son. He's 8 years old now. So 8 years ago, I had him. I didn't know that a doula existed. Somebody offered. They're like, "Do you have a doula?" And I was like, "Is that something I put in my bag before go to the hospital? What is it? What contraption is this?" And like, no, a doula, like a support person. And at that time, I was a single parent, so that sounded really lovely. Like really, like, oh, somebody's gonna come with me to the hospital. I don't have to go alone. And it was, like just it was miraculous. I met her 2 days before. I called her when I'm in labor. I'm like, hey, I know we just met, but I'm in labor already, and she was there. And her touch, the safety that she made me feel, um, just really opened my eyes. Really opened my eyes, and since that moment, I I knew that no mother should ever birth alone. And that's a big, even a derivative of where my name, Madre Soltera, came from. Madre Soltera means single mother, but I never wanted to like believe in that a mom is single, because she's not. She's always surrounded by the mothers before her, the mothers around her, the mothers, that will birth later. All that we're all connected to this one big long lineage of mothers, and I wanted to remind mothers of that. I didn't know quite sure how that was. It took me many, many years to kind of figure out, how did that look like? How am I going to be of best support? And how it ended up me like discovering, what my medicine was and where my place was in this realm was actually through um, something I didn't have, which was I didn't know how to nourish myself or my family. My mom never cooked. My dad never cooked. We were raised on McDonald's, KFC, salami sandwiches, Chef Boyardee raviolis. Once, like on very special occasions, we would go to Denny's. So I never knew what like nourishing meals were besides whatever my grandma would make, which would be these like really wonderful soups, like sancochos and all these Colombian. My grandma's from Cali, Colombia, and her lineage and my grandfather's lineage and are from there. And she would always try to make me eat my soups, and my palate was so colonized that I was like, no, it's not a hot dog, it's not pizza. I don't like this. This is horrible. Like, I don't want soup. I'd cry. I'd pick out all the cilantro. I'd make her life like hell. And and it wasn't until my postpartum with Noah that I had to that my mom didn't know how to cook, so she didn't know how to nourish me. Here I am breastfeeding in a bed, feeling depleted, alone. And she started ordering these soups, ajiaco specifically, which isn't from my region of Colombia. Ajiaco is more towards Bogota, so the mountainous regions, because it's a hearty potato soup And all these potatoes are typically found in that Andean mountain range, so it's like a grounding, warming soup for that cold region. um, and so she would bring me this soup during my postpartum, and it would give me life. It would make me remember something that I wasn't even sure where this memory was coming from. And um and yeah, it really helped me out in growing stronger and more resilient every day to take care of my son. And as he grew older, as he starting weaning from the breast and eating more solids, then I started thinking, okay, well, now how do I feed him? I can't keep ordering, take out for myself, and I need to feed him like good stuff. And that had me start exploring how to what does nourishment mean. And so I studied holistic nutrition. um, After that, I studied, holistic nutrition, and I really learned about traditional practices of fermenting and soaking, and really like how to make our food more bioavailable, the importance of broths, the importance of fats, and really incorporating that into our food. um, I really started like, okay, I want to know worldly cuisine. My son has a Armenian background, Italian background. My parents Colombian and Cuban. Wanted to just kind of learn. So I would make him sour cherry rice. I would make him homemade pasta. So really, really like diving deep into these culinary traditions, and so I could remind him too where he came from, and make sure his diet and his palate wasn't just this idea, this colonized diet, this American diet that we have. And yeah, now we're 8 years later, and I was making just a lot of foods, and not as a profession. I was actually a bartender, an alchemist in a sense, making cocktails. And one day I just realized, I didn't want to be serving that anymore. I didn't feel that my work as a healer was getting through in the best way, and serving somebody something that would maybe suppress like what they were really looking for. And so I decided to step out of bartending, and simultaneously call in, like, finally, like, really say it out loud: I want to be a doula. And I said it out to the universe, and I became pregnant with my daughter, like right after that, like the same month.
Wow.
And and yeah, my daughter really taught me like what it is to reclaim birth, and pregnancy portal. And as well as I was able to really explore what home birth meant this time. I looked into midwifery. I didn't know that any of this realm existed back when I had my son. So now 8 years later, I was able to have my home birth, and really honor the 40 days of postpartum this time. And this time, understanding the importance of community and calling out to community, and asking for support and receiving support in what looked like meals, or even just, hey, come over and wash my dishes. And really, and be strict too about, hey, I'm staying in for these 40 days. This energy is really important to me, and I really wanted to protect that. And yeah, so in a nutshell, that's how I am here, through just like life's experiences, and asking, and the right teachers. And recently, I do want to honor one of my teachers. My grandma never wanted to pass down any of these. Um, she didn't want to pass down no recipes to me. She when growing up in Colombia, and in her day and age, going back to these traditional recipes and these traditional postpartum ways, to them is like, oh, that's what the campesinos do, that's what the farmers do, like, that's, we're proud, we're modernized. And it's a product of colonization, and trying to forget that and be more modern. And no, you just go into a hospital and you knock, that's how my mom was born. Just, my grandma goes into a hospital, they knock her out, they shave her up, and give her a nice clean baby when she wakes up. And so yeah, it was taking that, and also my the birth of myself, like learning through all that, and trying to, like, how can we do different, how can we heal that lineage. And it just takes by like reclamation of these, and asking questions to people that will share. So actually, through my grandma, during the pandemic, she wanted me to write to a friend of hers that lived in a little small town in Colombia, this elder woman, Doña Emilia. And she was living in a small pueblito, and she had taken care of all her sisters in the traditional postpartum way. And so she started sharing with me all these beautiful secrets and traditional practices, and why, because that's the thing. Sometimes, these elders, like my grandma, would be like, oh, you got to stay in for 40 days, but they don't know why. So it's really nice, like finding that understanding of why, like the energetics behind it, the spirituality behind it, the physical aspects too of it. What happens when we don't do these practices, and why we have so many ailments in modern day postpartum, from postpartum depression to womb collapses and or womb tilts, or later down the line hysterectomies. Like this could all be healed. Oh, I'm frozen.
I can hear you. I can
Okay.
hear you. Yeah. There you are. Hey.
This could all be healed, if we went back to these simple practices of just really, taking care of ourselves in that time. They say how you take care of yourself in those 40 days is how it sets you up for 40 years as a womb bearer. So yeah, I wanted to give a lot of thanks to Amelia. She's not here any longer, but I'm really grateful, that what she shared, and I'm continuing her work, and every pot of soup I make.
Yeah, it's beautiful that you were able to talk with someone and get the knowledge from them about the hows and the whys and where does these practices, how to integrate them fully and holistically, because I discovered my Chinese traditions through this little book. It was this little book, and it was a little printed book that a Chinese woman. I need to when I find the name, I'm gonna uh, link it below, because she wrote this little like guidebook and no pictures, and it was just like, this is what my mom told me, and she's really funny about it because there's all this sarcasm in there, like, I can't watch TV, like, why? Because the evil is gonna come in, and but then she actually practices the 40 days, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a completely different culture than your lineage, and different a place geographically, but it's still the 40 days, and it's still a lot of practices and that integrate kind of going inward, right? It's like you're not reading books not because books are evil, but you're not reading books because you're focusing so much on your internal process, and you're
Mm-hmm.
allowing yourself an internal process. And so, not going outside the house for 40 days, I kind of see that as a extension of just honoring. It's not that you can't set foot outside the house if you don't want to. It's an extension of honoring that there is an internal process happening. And
Mm-hmm.
by honoring it in your physical space, you're also honoring it in your body.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have anyone to tell me this stuff firsthand. So, the fact that I could read what her mom shared with her, and then I got to talk to my mom about, hey, what was birth like in your family, and then hear her practices, and a lot of it was like binding the mother and binding the baby and not letting the wind and drafts, so you couldn't let a draft in.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't know why, because she didn't grow up in China either. She grew up in Jamaica. She was born in Jamaica. So she doesn't even really understand the whys of why we're doing all these things, but she saw them, and she didn't practice them herself. So the fact that I was hearing you say that you grew up on McDonald's and fast food, but then there was the pregnancy and the birth, and it was like something just like awakened in you. And it just reminds me of how much we don't know about birth, and how much we don't know about physiology, and how much we don't know about our genes and how they turn on and turn off our DNA. And we're so linked to our ancestors through our DNA, and how do
Mm-hmm.
they turn on and off? But it just reminded me of how sea turtles, they need to walk down to the beach when they're born from the eggs. They need to walk down to the beach by themselves because that turns on their internal navigation system so that when
Mhm.
they're ready to have babies, they know exactly how to come back to that same beach. So if you ever see a turtle walking down to the beach, the local people and the people who hold the knowledge of the turtles will tell you, no, 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 don't help that turtle. That turtle needs to walk by itself. Otherwise, it'll
Mhm.
get lost. And
Wow.
so just hearing you talk about how just it just flipped on for you,
Mhm.
that receiving the nourishment, receiving the food in a different way, and wanting to provide it to your children in a different way. That's just beautiful.
I love your analogy with the turtles. That's so beautiful. I had no idea, but it makes so much sense. I think about salmon as well. They say the salmon, they're birth that in one spot of the river, they go downstream, they spend like, I forgot how many years in the ocean. And then one day something turns on and they know exactly how to navigate through this big wide ocean back to that little stream, moving all the way up, knowing like, and just trusting, that I'm going, all these challenges that they have to go up the river just to go spawn their young. And that's just like locked in their DNA. And wow, thank you for like reminding me of that, like how much we don't know, but how much we do know inside of our bodies, inside of locked away in those secrets.
Yeah, it's so good to talk about things like that scientists, and the general public, they acknowledge that animals migrate and animals, go back to the same place to have their young because we need that acknowledgement too. We need to acknowledge that there is something happening just because, you know, um, institutions or, the greater, scientific community doesn't acknowledge that what happens to us when we birth, that we know it happens. And it's it's interesting because I was talking to you before this interview about how food you said food connects us genetically to our ancestors and reminds us those things, and I never put that together. So can you talk a little bit about how food, um in my perspective, I can see how birth connects us to those things, and genetically something happens to us and we transform and we, I don't know, however we process it and integrate it, it changes us. Can you talk about how food kind of connects us to that ancestral lineage and maybe about the traditional ways of preparing food and
Hmm.
why that practice is nourishing and how, how it can benefit us?
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's I see there's a deep connection between like food and birth work because they both have that same power to remind us. They I think when colonization happened, they try to stamp out our culture in many different ways and in many different cultures, from the people of the South, the people of the North, the people of the islands. Um, just all, everybody was affected in this way by some kind of shift, in colonization. And what there's like a phrase that like, oh, they didn't know we were seeds. And so I think we hold a lot of our secrets in our seeds, in our food, in our soil. And so that like, a lot of things had to be hidden and things like that, like from that. And also our birthrights and these traditional ceremonies. And um yeah, you look at like even in Native American culture, like things are, there's a lot of like subliminal things, like just in the way we place, like everything is intentional in the way that the fireplace is set. And there's just so much, there's a way to like, it doesn't have to be written in a book. And so I feel like the same thing with our food. And I'm like thinking about corn specifically as a good example. Corn, as you know, is one of our first foods. It's the food of North America and South America and Central America. It's like, what binds us all together, of people of Americua. They call this for the land where all the four winds meet. And corn, is what unites us. And so corn was also one of the first things that they tried to monopolize and genetically modify, and take the corn away from the people, and the people forget who they are. And so I know like this story of like when the colonizers first came, they took a lot of this corn back to Europe, and were like eating a ton of corn because they thought it was like, oh, that's what they eat over there, and they're eating a ton of corn. And what they didn't take with them was a secret of nishtamalization. which is this process of soaking the corn in ash and wood ash. So the kernel, the outside of the kernel of the corn is like dissolved, and you can access like all the beautiful nutrition that's in the inside. It's incredible, like ancestral technology there that they were able to discover. Who knows how? Like somebody maybe dropped corn inside of like a bucket full of fireplace ash, and this alchemy happened. But this nixtamalization makes such huge difference of like all these bioavailable minerals that are accessible in the corn, but without it, these minerals are not present. And not only are they not present, there's this I can't remember the exact process, but it actually depletes you if you eat too much corn without having it like as just as the corn is. So they found themselves like in Europe dealing with these diseases from having mineral depletion, to the point that there's actually like a theory that like because they would look like really pale and like dark lips, and they think even like the story of Dracula is related to people that had like corn nutrition like uh depletion. And so yeah, just things like that. So like remembering these ways, like going back to like, okay, how like these traditional practices of caring for our food, from cultivating, from growing it ourselves, or talking to farmers, or just getting to know more about our native food ways, but also our like local food ways, because the land that we live on too has everything that we need to take care of ourselves. Sometimes like it's nice to be able to have like yuca or plátano, because it reminds us of like from our ancestors of the South. But it's not always, if you're living up north, in Portland, Oregon, or something like that, there's still so much like really nutritious food that's super hyper local, and can also have the same like energy, and can, if you prepare it in a certain way, it could also still resemble and bring back that memory. So that's why like the recipes are somewhat important, but the ingredients, as long like I like to just think of, as long as they're from where you're from, that also is like tying in two stories. It's start tying in the stories of where you are now and where you came from. So like for instance, the soup sancocho, this is a soup that was this soup, I really love this soup because it tells a story of resilience. Because not only its ingredients come from like its resilience, its ingredients are brought from all parts of the world through colonization, as they made their way from Europe. They stopped in Africa, they got the plantains. I believe cilantro wasn't from here. The yuca, like just different things came. Well, the yuca was from South America, but like potatoes and things like that. So all these different ingredients that made their way only through because of colonization. So here we're looking at like a traumatic event, but the people were able to collect these pieces and alchemize it and transform it into one of the most healing and celebratory soups. Where in Colombia, like they make this soup to just gather for no reason, like that they'll put like they'll put a big pot next to the river with some logs and a fire, and just make this soup. And and it doesn't even have to have those specific ingredients like the corn. It usually has corn, potatoes, yuca, plantain, but it's also like whatever people bring. Like there's this other soup of the Caribbean, which I think you might know. No, it's called rundown in Jamaica,
Mhm.
and it's in Jamaica. In Nicaragua they call it rondon,
Mhm.
and in Colombia I think they call it rondo. Like it's just kind of like the spelling of it has transformed as it made its way. But the reason they call it rundown is because it was a communal soup, and so everybody just brought down whatever they could run down, like whatever they caught in the sea, whatever they took off those branches, whatever they harvested out of their soil. So that's why I think it's like really important coming back to these ways of just like one, like looking at what we have. An elder taught me that, Chief Marvin Swallow, he said, we always have what we need, like right in front of us. We don't have to keep seeking so much. And so making really good use of it. We don't have to sometimes even, sometimes people think like organic is out of our budget. But when we look at like local farms, it's sometimes just like really local foods. And you can find like, they might not be certified organic, but the farmers are using organic practices. And yeah, so we're really lucky too. Here in South Florida, we have several farms are already doing that. And we also have really good programs that even offer like free boxes of organic food to like lower income families. And so I always, want moms to know that it's not out of reach, and it's just kind of becoming creative. Or just even, finding one of our ancestral soups, which are very simple soups, but just kind of like, I don't know, like when I used to bartend, there's always a base of a recipe, but you can add whatever you need into it, and then it's your own. So becoming creative with that. And yeah, I think that was. I know, you also asked about like the importance of like, these processes. um like I do really believe like cooking over the fire has its own energy. Like really slow cooking is bringing us back to like internalizing the process, really being present with our food. We're able to pray with our food and really put in the good intentions and watch over it. And or cooking with family or cooking with community together is like always such a beautiful process. So I urge, people to try that, like have not just Thanksgiving, like any day is a good day to celebrate and make a soup together as a family. Like in hard times too, I found, when we have hard times, like making a soup, we can alchemize that and really have like a really healing soup if we make it together. And other processes, like it all is part of the slow process. Like if we take time to soak our grains beforehand, soak our beans beforehand, mm, like we're coming back to these ancestral ways where we can actually like really unlock all the nutrients that these foods have. And these are secrets that our grandmas would tell us, but we sometimes we just like, no, no, grandma, I got an Instapot, I can make things really fast now. But these ancestral technologies, there's a reason there wasn't so many ailments there were in the world. And I think it's just going back to intentionality and slowing down in our processes. We live in a really fast paced world, so why can't we just take that moment to nourish ourselves and really do it slowly?
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like more than just food, it sounds like more than just like, and it's, a lot of people when we get pregnant, we're like, okay, what do we need? What vitamins do we need? What supplements do we need? What do we need to be eating? Oh, there's, protein in this, and there's, vitamin B in this. And so we're like, okay, we're kind of pulling from that place. But it sounds like the food that you're talking about has a lot to do with pulling in community. I mean, getting your food from the farmers around you. That's already pulling in the community, and then cooking in community. So you're getting a connection to the people around you. You're getting actual physical, like company, which is great for our health. I mean, somebody told me, she was going to send me the research, but that hugging 7 times a day is actually one of the best things you can do for your health. And
I
so
love
it
that.
just reminds me of that practice. But then you're also pulling in the earth, right? So the connection to the land that you're on, and using hyper local foods and using foods that grow in your region. You're also, so it sounds like you're not just talking about eating food, but you're also talking about this holistic and almost a holographic view of the world, where you, how does it go, so below, so above, so below, as within, as without, something like that. But it's
Mm,
talking about how on the cellular level that we're kind of like the same design of the universe is happening
mm,
on the grand scale as it is on our cellular and genetic level.
mm,
So it just sounds like you're not just talking about eating, you're talking about, okay, what do we need as a, you know as a geographic location, as a community, as a people. And if that's what we need as a people, then that's what we need on the inside too. And that's how
Mm-hmm.
if we nourish ourselves that way, then that's what we're giving to ourselves on a cellular level, on an internal level. And it's so much more than just eating. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really what, postpartum, and maybe not just postpartum, but speaking from the sense that there's so much postpartum depression. It's such a huge problem. It's such a huge issue that many of us are not, safe from. It just reaches so many of us, and it makes me think about the isolation that we live in. And if you compare that to how we eat, like you said, oh, I'm just going to go to the grocery store and put everything in my Instapot and just eat it. But you're eating in isolation too. And how nourishing
Mm-hmm.
can that be for you? And
Mm-hmm.
reaching out, asking for community. I remember when I moved here when I was 4, and in my class, it must have been like 6. They read us the story of stone soup. I don't know if
Mm,
you've
I
ever
love
heard
that.
that
Yeah, I love
story.
that soup. I read
And
that book.
so it's like every animal brings one vegetable or one thing that they got from their house or they grew or they found. So we all had to bring in just one vegetable and we put it in a pot. And at the end of the day, we ate it. And I remember feeling like, like this is the best thing I've had since I've moved, from Jamaica to America. This is the best thing. I still remember it. I still remember the flavor and just the feeling of that soup. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for that reminder.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that reminder too. The importance of, like, that's definitely, like, postpartum is the time to call in that community and not be afraid to ask for support and be open to receiving. I definitely always recommend to moms, like, and during their baby shower, or if they're open to like a traditional mother's blessing, like, which is a ceremony to celebrate the mother, just it's any time before the birth, or even if they don't do any of that, like, even just starting a WhatsApp chat with all of your closest friends, even if it's just a group of 3, and just seeing, who can alternate meals throughout that time, that throughout that 6-week period, those 40 days. And it's totally accessible, like, as long as somebody can bring a big casserole or just a huge pot of soup or a nice big pot of broth or some warming cacao, or this there's, like, different simple foods that the community could bring, and that just supports that family so much. Knowing that that food was made with love, knowing that somebody cares about them, because it could be isolating, when in those 40 days when we're not really, we're really protecting our energy, we're getting to understand just our energy between us and the new baby, and or as we are as a new family unit. So it is that one time in our life. It's called la cuarentena in South America, the quarantine. um but it doesn't mean we can't still receive help, and food is definitely a good way to know that like the world still loves us outside, and it's a good way to remind the moms that they're supported. And when that's practiced, when these traditional care, like, communal aspects come return back to postpartum, you see a lot of these moms are so resilient and so strong at the end of their, like, 1 year of postpartum. They're looking great. And what I think is really beautiful, all the moms that I have supported in their postpartum with, like, meals or traditional care, they pass that on. I see them making a meal at the end of their 40 days. They're already dropping off a meal to another mom, and we just continue that, and we, that line of care. So they understand. And like, I think about my mom for her second baby, when she had my sister and I was 2.5 years old. She came home with and ate a can of Campbell's soup by herself. And I just it doesn't have to be that way. So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, yeah. I love that it just you pass it on. If you allow yourself to receive, then it makes you not just stronger, but it kind of pulls you into that circle of giving too. So it's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we have to remind ourselves like it's okay to receive. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay. And it's actually really wonderful and such a great way to connect and celebrate with people when you can receive and allow people to help, when you need it. Um, I wanted to ask if you have any like like a list of of ingredients or something that people can be incorporating in their postpartum time? Are there specific foods that are good for us, or specific ways to prepare food other than soup and community and fires
Mm-hmm.
and all that good stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely have like I, a base of what would make, a mom's life really easy. These are super accessible ingredients you can find at the supermarket, or you can order even online. That's what I do, some of my shopping for like good quality grass-fed bones from online. Um, that's accessible as well. So first one is bones. I highly recommend it. In Native American cultures, the bones were always reserved for postpartum and pregnant women, the children, and the elders. So it is a time in our lives. I know there could be controversy with veganism and vegetarianism, and I ask moms to respect and honor what they think is right for their body in this time. But it has been shown, moms that do incorporate bones or internal meats in their diets are shown to just like really thrive in postpartum, and because these minerals are really highly and bioavailable and accessible in that time. And when we don't have those minerals, you start seeing ailments like hair loss. You start seeing ailments like cavities, because it starts leaching from our bones and from our teeth, fatigue, hormone imbalance. So there's a lot of things that come with it. And so I always urge moms, if there's one time in your life that you need this and you deserve this for you and for the health of your baby, and it's postpartum. So that being said, there are different ways that you can work without bones. Seaweeds, or there's a herb called horsetail, cola de caballo, which is like collagen producing, because you really need that collagen to really help bring things back together. As you know, after you had a baby, you had like a placenta the size of a paper plate. Like, that's the wound that you have inside of you. We might feel good in the outside, but inside we're still really healing. And so it's really necessary, for the health of our womb, because if we don't care for it in that time, like I said, things later down the line can manifest in our
It's
womb
called
health.
horsetail, horse as
Yeah,
in like,
cola de caballo, or
okay.
horsetail. That's it.
Where
So
where do you find that?
you can get it at any Mexican grocers. You can get it
Okay.
online. I've seen it grow here in South Florida. I found it at a nursery. Shave grass, I think, is another name for it.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so that's a good one, like collagen producing. But you do need to mix it, I think, with vitamin C, and just even like any. So what horsetail does is like helps boost your body's ability to produce collagen. So it's not giving you collagen, but it's boosting your body's ability. So yeah, and then I think there are maybe vegan forms of collagen. I'm not quite sure. I haven't really
I think
explored.
I think if they're not vegan collagen, they're similar to collagen,
Yeah,
is what I've
like
seen.
I think Amundi Herbs has something same, like a blend of like collagen boosting herbs.
Hmm.
So yeah, so the bones, and like a lot of our grandmothers of the South, they always put like lime inside of their soup, and there's like
Oh,
a reason to that as well, because vitamin C boosts now your body's ability to access that collagen.
ah,
So that's a good way. So bones is a big one. That's like my number one on my list. It's actually, in a lot of cultures, you drink only bone broth for the entire postpartum. Like in Colombia, in the farms, they say the man would raise 40 chickens for those 40 days, and the mom would eat the chicken bone broth or the chicken pieces like for the entire 40 days. I know in some cultures in Mexico, they only drink broth with nothing in it, or maybe some they'll start adding towards like the 20th day, like easily digestible or soft root veggies in there. Um, but because the bone broth has every mineral you need in that time to keep you good. So that's number one. Or like I said, the vegan options of getting like seaweeds, and really researching that well, if you are going to go down the vegan and vegetarian path, to make sure you're really taken care of.
yeah,
um
seaweeds too. They remind me of bone broth because they not only have the minerals, but they have that like that slippery, thick, thickener
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
quality.
Exactly. And that I think we were trying to say the word yesterday, mucilaginous.
Mucilaginous, maybe.
Yes, you got it. So that word,
We practiced that a few times.
and I still don't get it. But it's actually like a secret to a lot of traditional diets. Like if you ask your grandfather or your grandmother, oh, how much water did you drink back then? They'd be like, I never drank water, or maybe one cup.
Mhm.
What they did drink was a lot of like thick drinks like that, like water with chia or bone broths with like that are thickened, and or atole, which is like a traditional corn drink. These thick
Mm.
drinks like allow our hydration to go at a slower rate, but really hydrate us, like not just flush us out. And it also allows the minerals to kind of seep through slowly and stay in our body. So that's a real good key. So that being said, I
We make a juk. That's what we make for our
oh
healing,
yes,
which is like a really like a rice porridge. It's just you cook rice for hours and with lots and lots and lots of water. So it's very, very barely any rice, but it turns into this really hearty, big, thick bowl of soup. And
I
that's
love
the
juk.
that's
It's
the
my
healing
favorite.
soup.
It's so good. And yeah, that is a traditional postpartum. There's a really good book called The First 40 Days, and I
Mhm.
believe she's of Chinese descent, and so she uses juk a lot in as a base. And that's the nice thing about like these porridges. You can always just make a big bulk of them and top them with whatever you like for the postpartum mom. Like sometimes put an egg on top, or put sometimes greens on top, or veggies. My partner's father is Chinese, so he would make it for me like sometimes, and it's so delicious.
Yeah.
And so I make it as well here now with like a bone broth base, but
Mm.
like you could do with different seaweeds and water, and make it super nutritious. So yeah, bones, oats, is a big one. It's really like it is like that consistency that we're looking for, like thick,
Mhm.
and it's also considered like a galactagogue, like a really supporting in our milk production, and has a lot of minerals and good things. So if you soak them too, it makes them more bioavailable and also easier to, like as a postpartum mom, you're not going to have a lot of time to like in the morning to prepare yourself something to eat. So what I like to do is that's why I like to have always bone broth. That's the first thing I drink in the morning when I'm in postpartum, just to kind of like bring me back to life after nursing all night.
Mm.
Then if I have some soaked oats in the fridge, I'll warm that up. We'll top it with like a little bit of ghee or butter, or non-dairy coconut oil, however you like, a good fat on top of it.
Mhm.
A little bit of cinnamon, because cinnamon is warming, and then you can always do like some stewed apples. Yeah, so oats, bone broth, oats.
Do you recommend that the oats are always soaked? Like if you're pressed on time, is it going to be harmful like in the way that corn can be harmful and depleting, or is it, either or?
I think if you're pressed on time, it's totally fine cooking it. It's just going to take a longer time, and I think that longer time of cooking in the morning just it still opens up the grain, and allows it to be accessible. You do want to find oats that are glyphosate free. It's a big thing because oats are actually one of the most um
That's
like
the fertilizer,
glyphosate.
no, pesticide,
Yeah,
pesticide.
so a lot of
Hmm.
a lot of the oats are really ridden with that. So you want to look for that. You want to look for organic, especially in postpartum, because everything.
I know they have sprouted oats these days, which I'm really happy to be able to buy sprouted oats that aren't ridiculously expensive.
Oh, nice.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't think
yeah.
I've tried it.
Yeah, it tastes similar to like
Hmm.
non-sprouted oats, but my kids have sensitivities to like certain grains, and what I've
Mm.
learned is like we did kind of like the elimination diet, and so
Mm-hmm.
we had to eliminate all grains
Wow.
first.
Okay.
It's we it took us a while, it took us a couple years because we just tried, oh, let's go gluten free, and that didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did was we eliminated all grains and then like reintroduced them. And so I find that like the sprouted
Yeah.
grains and the sprout they don't want the fermented grains because they don't like the way it tastes. But I find that like at least since they're sprouted, they taste similar and they have
Okay.
that alchemy that we are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It unlocks some of the nutrients for them and
Yeah.
makes it easier for them to digest.
Absolutely, yeah. I love like sprouting like my beans if possible. When you have time, you can sprout your lentils. And it's super easy process. I think sometimes we overcomplicate it and read too many things online, but it's just yeah, soaking them and draining them and sticking them kind of like in a window to sprout and open, and it's really beautiful. Sprouted food is a live food, so you're bringing
Mm.
that like vitality back into your life. Yeah, so oats, and I also like amaranth. Amaranth is an ancient grain that is, it's of the south. It's a super nutrition grain, and it's also a galactagogue as well, and really helps with our lactation. So mixing amaranth with oats is a really nice way, or making like
Okay.
an amaranth and cornmeal atole is a really nice way. So yeah, tole is a traditional drink that is served in postpartum in Mesoamerica. It originated from Mexico, and it's made its way all the way down to South America, as we have a version of it in Colombia, um, and many other cultures. I think share that love for atole. It's traditionally a warm drink made with cornmeal and or niche nixtamalized cornmeal, which is actually even more bioavailable. So you can use any type of cornmeal, ideally organic,
And I
or blue
think you
corn.
can buy pre niche. I'm gonna ruin the word, but it's like pre
Yeah.
niche melitized cornmeal,
Uh-huh.
right? So you don't have to worry about bringing that home and like doing a
No,
whole
no,
process.
no. Yeah, it's already there's there's somebody on in San Francisco called Alma Semillas. I believe she sells it, and she actually even sells like a blend already done with the cinnamon, with the vanilla. So all you just do is add your milk, non-dairy milk or water, and mix that drink up, and it's just warming and thick, and it's just really good postpartum nutrition and grounding. So you can do it with atole. You can do it like that. You can even just make an amaranth atole. You can do it with oats, like it's just whatever grain you have. A quinoa, you can make like a thick drink with quinoa. There's so many different ways of making this drink, but the traditional way is with corn. So I like to have cornmeal present for the postpartum if possible, to make this drink. I also like to make it with cacao, because that would give me the extra energy I needed when I'd wake up in the morning after a long night of nursing. And it would just also, when I felt just like out of balance, or like my hormones were just like, I was just weepy, or my heart was feeling some certain way. Cacao is just full of magnesium and many other minerals, and really healing for the postpartum time. It's actually one of the first foods that is given as soon as the mom gives birth, or sometimes even in small doses during the birth, to give the mom a little extra energy. In Colombia, like, that's what the mom is served. Like, in Colombia, they're really strict about postpartum. According to what my elder would share with me, they would the mom would receive a bowl of soup and covered, and chocolate, a warm cacao drink, covered, and it would be brought to her door, and the mom would like open it up and just bring it into her room, like, not so, and they cover it so that not even the air gets into the food, because that's something that I think you mentioned earlier. The air is what you don't want into the postpartum body. You don't want. So in Colombia, like, if the mom has to leave her room for any reason, they cover her head. They put a little cotton balls in her ears, cover her whole body, make sure there's socks on her, just so no air can come into the body, because when we get air coldness, our womb contracts, and that's where the ailments start happening, from pain in our back, pain in our womb, headaches. So that's why we got to be really careful, and that's why we serve only warming foods in the time of postpartum.
Do they say anything about covering feet? I always like to cover people's feet, make sure their feet are warm and they don't step on like cold concrete.
Yeah, absolutely. The feet is a big one, because that's where the cold comes in. Our feet and our head. So always, like, the first thing I do when I come into a postpartum mom's house is look down at her feet, and hopefully she's not opening the door. But if she is walking around, she needs to have definitely some socks or something And even if she's in bed as well, her feet need to be covered. I always tell them womb health in general, like in any point of our lives, we shouldn't be walking on cold floors, like around our house. Like these practices like are taught to in Mesoamerica to the girls as young as 13, like make sure you wear your socks, make sure you're always, they wear, from age 13 and on, it's called a faja, or even younger. I can't remember the exact age, but they wear a faja, which is a band around the waist, around the womb area, to make sure our womb is always lifted. And you look at these cultures that practice this like belly binding and this wrapping, and you'll see they don't have a lot of like issues of hysterectomies and collapsed uterus and or like inconsistence with peeing and things like that. Because if you care for your womb from the start and specifically in postpartum, it sets us up really good.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, I started back to the food.
Okay. Perfect.
But
no
so
problem.
okay, so we had bones, and if not, highly mineralizing foods to make broths, from seaweeds to herbs and things like that, and oats, amaranth, corn. I always like to have root veggies to add into those bone broths or mineral broths. So like sweet potatoes, pumpkin, yuca. We don't eat plantain in postpartum because that actually is very can back us up, and so it's not a food that you would want. It's something you have when your digestion is like, they give it actually like more to if you're having like too much going to the bathroom, like easily,
right.
you use plantain. So in postpartum,
It's a binding, stagnant food. It's like a binding, of stagnation,
binding.
cold food.
So
Energetic.
plantain we don't have, but you can throw in the cáscara, the peel of the plantain into your soup, because that actually helps with lactation as well.
Oh, okay.
So things like that. In Colombia, we have also a specific vegetable root veggie called aracacha, and that's a really postpartum staple. It's known as like the Andean white carrot, if it was like translated into like what they call it. And we don't really have a version of it here, but we do have parsnip, which has a similar flavor. So I wonder if like it also has like the same like nutrients that we need in during postpartum. But so the basis of root veggies from pumpkins and yuccas and sweet potatoes, potatoes as well, like just anything that's like really grounding and will bring us back into our body. Carrots, beets, I'm sure, are really rich in iron. And whatever you have at hand, whatever you have access, whatever the season is, it'll change. It'll look different for everyone.
Does your culture, do you think a smoothie would be like good for postpartum from your cultural viewpoint?
You could do a smoothie, but it needs to be at room temperature. Like we got to leave it out before you serve it to the mom. I actually really enjoyed mamey smoothies during my postpartum.
So like a room temperature thick smoothie, not like an icy frozen.
Yeah, not you wouldn't want it from, like you could throw a banana in and some dates in. Dates, I know is another common postpartum food in Morocco. That's one of the first foods they give to the mom as well because of its mineral content. I work with dates, but also maple as well, just because of its mineral content, and panela as well. I work with, and I'll explain a little bit about panela. But it also gives like the mom that extra little bit of energy that she needs, when days are like feeling a little rough, but also brings the sweetness. We need some sweetness in our life, and after we just went to battle, after we just had birth, honey too. So any of those, I would say, are a good staple to have in your kitchen, from maple, honey, dates, or panela. And panela, also known as piloncillo in Mexico, or it's like it's an unprocessed sugar. Actually, like it's another byproduct of like colonization in a way, because when white sugar started happening on the islands, the natives of folks of the islands would actually keep this byproduct that would come out of the machines that after they would transform it into this super white sugar, because like the Europeans wanted like this really, really white sugar to for its pureness. And but the same thing happened to them. Like they were eating all this white sugar reserved for like the elite, and it's sugar is really mineral depleting, and so they were like, you know, having all these cavities and all these ailments. On the other hand, panela is like almost as medicinal as honey. It's has like all from I can't remember the exact like mineral content right now, but it's just a ton of minerals inside of it. And that's a staple in Colombia that is given to postpartum moms to increase their milk. And I didn't believe my mom. I'm like, sugar water is not going to make my milk come. And I drank one glass and like I was engorged. So I you know, I
Right.
do it with caution. You know, if you already have good milk supply, you know, drink a little bit. But it's really good. You know, it's called agua de panela. You have a little bit of that panela with some water and a squeeze of lemon, nice and warm. And it's another one. Or you can use it panela to top on top of your oatmeal. You can bake with it. It's a really, really nice postpartum staple to have. And it's accessible here in Miami in any supermarket you go to. You can also find organic versions sometimes, like now at Whole Foods or at this some local Colombian spots would carry it. And if not, if you live far away, like in different parts, you can find it in the local Latin American grocer.
Beautiful. So I just have two quick questions before we wrap up. And it is one, piece of advice for your number one piece of advice for pregnancy or postpartum, or one for each. And number two, what is something that they don't talk about or they don't tell you in pregnancy or postpartum that, you know, that people should know?
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. So my number one advice for postpartum and pregnancy, I would say, is rest. It's such an internal journey. It's the one time in our life that we're really not a part of any cycles. You know, we're removed from our own like secular cycle of our menstruation. We're in this ethereal land between like life and death. You know, it's this like limbo space where we have to go in order to birth our baby. So that's in pregnancy, we prepare for that. You know, it's 9 months that we're gifted to really process and break down everything that we need to work on before we birth this baby. I feel like the more work that we're able to do correlates to how hard we have to work in our birth. And when we get into the birth, it is a time of like total surrender and rest and well, not rest. It's definitely a battle, but but the surrendering part, like it's a yin and a yang in the birth portal. Like you have to be like trusting and open, but also you're vigilant and determined and looking for like just like you're just really committed to that portal. And then postpartum is like completely, as they say in Asian cultures, like very yin. That's the time where we go back into rest because we just had this big fiery yang of birth, and now we're left in this like almost like this space of nothing but everything. And here we lost like who we were as like who we were before, whether we're from maiden to mother, or from a mother of one or two now to mother of three, and we're just really recollecting the pieces. And so that's why those first 20 days is like you should only stay in your bed for the entire 20 days and be very, for the first 20 days, like really like be protective of your space, of your energy, because you're so open. You just had this very fiery openness of birth, and now you're open to receiving. So be very selective of what you're receiving, and anything that will enable and facilitate your rest is what you really want to bring in. So, asking for support in food, asking for support in dishes or with childcare or house cleanup, instead of like, everybody wants to see the mom. I mean, everyone wants to see the baby, but how about the mom, So really taking that time to be in someone in a way, like, selfish of your own peace. I know I read that once in like a book in like a yoga sutra. It's like the one thing we should be selfish of is our peace. And specifically, I think that's a good time to think about that, what we really need and call that in. And that will facilitate us like resting and recovering, and what will facilitate like our connection to our baby in that time. So to be really like, we got to be strong with our boundaries in that time, but also just kind of set ourselves up in the pregnancy time, so those boundaries are ready in place when it comes, like knowing your birth team, knowing that your like telling your family, like, maybe 15 minutes max you can come over, or maybe you can come over after the 40 days. So yeah, I did say 20 days because so the postpartum is divided into 2 periods. First 20 days is really just like pulling back the pieces and rebuilding ourselves and doing a lot of the internal healing, like the physiological internal healing. And then around the 20th day, we start feeling, oh, we can start doing things again. It has this like trickster energy because we're feeling good, everything's starting to feel back into place. But now it's like the mental and the spiritual aspect of now, okay, now I'm rebuilding who I am going to be. Who am I going to be for this duration of motherhood, as my journey into motherhood. So that's why 40 days it's 2 windows that you need to be totally completed and respected in that time. And I guess for your question of like what, I think what maybe we don't know, I would say it's that, I don't think people know that it's that long. Like we underestimate that, I see so many times moms with newborns like in Target already on the 2nd week. And I was one of them. I was with my son at Target with him at 2 weeks old, because we're expected to bounce back into this culture, and bounce back, like that's our culture, like just fast pace. And so we, sometimes we think we're going to go step into this like really peaceful postpartum space where everybody's going to respect that. Sometimes we don't know, like, well, not only will other people kind of like, you could go out, there's peer pressures from family members, oh, you're fine. Or, people will bombard you by coming to your house sometimes. Or simultaneous too, like I've had, you start getting anxious of like, I need to leave my house. It's been 20 days. I haven't seen the outside. I need to get out. But really sticking to that, that's going to happen. It happens to every single mom in that time, but really sticking to it, being clear with your boundaries. If you feel they're not being met, have somebody that can reiterate them, from your midwife to your partner to a friend, putting a sign on your door, like 15 minutes, or just drop off the food outside. You can be really clear and strong about that, and people will respect that. And they might not understand at first, but later down the line, like I didn't understand at first when my mom told me I had to stay in for 40 days. And now I'm like, yeah, mom, okay, I get you. I understand. So, yeah.